Okay, let's do this. All right, special guest today. We're doing a special record over the weekend because you're a busy man, but I'm joined by Sauron himself, Salah Baker. Salah, how are you?
I'm amazing. I'm amazing. Thank you very much.
So
I'm excited.
you're busy. Like are you even in LA right now?
No, no, no. I'm in New Orleans shooting a new movie that I'm really excited about because I've never worked with this director before, and I'm really excited. It's been one of my dream directors to work with. So I'm here. I've been here since December, so I got another 3 weeks of shooting. But yeah, I'm constantly busy. I'm going to another movie straight after this one, so I'm
Oh,
excited to hear about this news.
it's so exciting. Well, we were just talking about before I hit record. We were just talking about how this went down. Tell that story. Like you said, you were browsing IMDb for something.
So yeah, so I was looking at I was doing research on another project and another couple of actors and directors I'm working with, and as I was scrolling through, a Lord of the Rings logo came up, and then just as I was about to click on it, you called and your name came up on my phone, Justin Seal, and I was like, wait, Justin from the One Ring. And then you called and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I was like, "This is weird because the logo popped up on IMDb and then you rang." And I was like, "Wait, are you in my phone, dude? How do you know that I'm even looking at Lord of the Rings or anything?" But it just happened to come up and then you called. So, and then you mentioned something which was very interesting. So I didn't end up going into that web because you'd said something was being announced. And so I didn't want to click on that link because it would have shown me something that you were telling me about. So, and
Yeah.
now I have anxiety about what you're actually going to show me. So,
I promise it's legit. It's official. It's clean. so so Sauron himself doesn't know the title of the show yet. You haven't seen anything. You've done us all a privilege here to stay off the internet for a couple days, and this will be the first time seeing the title of the new show from Amazon.
yes, I've heard lots of good things about shooting, and obviously the unfortunate uh, thing that everyone's going through right now has caused the shooting to halt and take a little longer. So I've been really excited about any news from the show. So
Yeah, and of course you probably have a bunch of friends still in New Zealand that may or may not be involved in the show, but
yeah,
everyone's under NDA and no one knows anything, right?
no, I know nothing. Even the all-seeing eye knows nothing right now.
Well, let's get to it. I'm so excited. I'm going to hit play on this trailer, and we got you on screen right now. So let's see your reaction to the announcement, the title announcement for Amazon's huge Lord of the Rings show. I'm going to turn off my video so we can see you just perfect. So here we go.
Three rings for the Elven kings under the sky. 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie.
Rings of power? Oh, wow. Wow, that's epic. Wow, that's so cool. It's a different kind of opening, but really, really awesome.
What do you think of that title?
I mean, the rings of power. I mean, they are my rings. So this is amazing. It's kind of like you get that tingle through your body where I'm like, my hands are sweaty and everything's sweaty right now because they don't really give you much. But, you know, obviously the title and the forging, which I was a part of in the original, the Lord of the Rings movie, which the forging of the ring, which I forged myself. So this is awesome. I think my body's still like tingling hot because I wanted to see more.
And hearing the ring verse again for the first time in 20 years.
I know. I was like, oh my gosh, I know this well. But whose voice was that?
That's the new Galadriel. Supposedly. We don't have any confirmation, but it sounds like the new actress, Morfydd Clark.
Oh, she sounds cool. I mean, wow. I'm excited to see more. This is crazy. I mean, it's been so long since I did the forging of the ring, and now the TV show with Amazon. Exciting. I need more. So when is this new trailer coming out?
Well, the rumors are that we're going to get a trailer possibly at the Super Bowl. I can't imagine that they would do anything less than big in 2 weeks.
My gosh, that's exciting. I'm excited for the fans and myself because obviously I'm a fan. So I can't wait to see more. This is amazing. I'm sweating. I'm sweating still.
I know. I like seeing it again. I'm just like, I'm so excited. And it's called the Rings of Power, which means we're just focused on everything that Sauron does, right? Like that his thing is making rings, 20 of them.
Yeah. Yes. And then the one ring that rules them all. I mean, this is really exciting. So are they going back? I mean, that title kind of feels like we're going back to how they were all made or where they were made and how they were all tied together. So I'm really excited.
Yep, that's exactly. It looks like that's what the show is. It's about Sauron and his rise to power and the rings of power and the making of the rings and the distribution of the rings and the corruption of the rings. It's everything Sauron. Look at the legacy that you continue to make. Amazon spending $1 billion on your legacy, Sauron's legacy.
Man, that's amazing. I'm excited. That brings me to believe that is this before Sauron is Sauron when he's the prequel to him becoming Sauron, or is it like I don't know.
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know. The only thing that we know is the title, basically.
Oh my gosh! See, now my brain's just going all over the place trying to figure out what it is or who's what and what's what. This is exciting.
It's so
I'm excited for everyone.
Well, thank you so much, Salah, for checking out the actual title of the show. And you know what, Amazon, if you're watching, I think we never saw Salah's face in The Lord of the Rings, so he's a completely capable actor that can join your new TV series. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Hey, man. I've been a part of history, and I'm really thankful to be a part of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But I'm excited to see what they do with it and who they've chosen for all these amazing characters. So I'm just excited, no matter what, and excited for the fans to see it and everyone to join the new saga.
Yeah. And then final question before we let you go, because you're a busy actor working all over the country. Obviously, they've got a whole new cast. A lot of them are first-time actors. Lord of the Rings changed your career. I mean, you moved to LA. You crashed on Cliff's couch and everything. Any tips for these actors that are about to be on the biggest stage?
I mean, they've all worked hard to get to this point. They all auditioned and did great jobs to put themselves in a place where they can, bring their talents to the stage. And all I would say is dream even bigger and never give up and keep going. And the world is out there for your taking. So I started with Sauron, and I've moved on to plenty of other projects. So, and kept on learning. So there's no small jobs. You just keep learning, and every job you get is a notch in the belt of experience for your future. So keep going and never give up, and just dream bigger than you can ever dream.
Yeah, you're in the Marvel, you're in the Deadpool universe. Aren't you in the
Star Wars.
Westworld universe?
Yeah, Westworld, Star Wars. Like I've done a lot of big feature films. I've done a lot of Marvel films over the years. So you can never dream. The universe will give you more than you can dream. So dream big, and there's no ceiling to it. And you can create your own projects in the future along the way from your from learning on all these projects you will get. So keep going and never give up.
Well, that's great advice. Thank you, Salah Baker, for
Thanks, Justin.
experiencing this. And we look forward to your next project. And I'm so excited that you're just part of our fellowship, and
Always.
we're continually here.
Always. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate the One Ring. Always. They've always had my back and always, there for me. I appreciate it.
Great. Well, we'll talk to you soon, Salah.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. I can't wait.
Later, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Hey, Justin, are we technically okay with our?
Yeah, I think I figured it out. I don't know what just I don't know what was happening, but we were having everyone was muted, and then Corey was muted, and then I was muted. I think we're good now. There it is.
I kind of enjoyed like the little fractal picture we had going on there for a little while, though. That was kind of fun.
That's what I get for trying to produce this and still host and co-host with Cliff. Welcome to Torn Tuesday, folks. That was, of course, Sauron himself, Salah Baker. You have seen him in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. He played Sauron underneath all of that metal forged by Weta Workshop. And he is the Sauron that we see on screen. He's, as we just mentioned, he's been in a bunch of stuff, and he did that for you, for us, for the fans, because he's a fan with us. And I guess let's just jump in with the Tolkien professor here. Corey, what was your first reaction seeing the title?
I loved the seeing the title itself. So my main reaction, I was kind of torn between two things when I saw the teaser trailer there. One was I loved the look and feel of it. Visually, I thought it was really splendid. I loved the way that they built the entire effect. So visually, I was very, very impressed, and I loved the fit. But as far as like information, I came to the end and I was like, okay, so everything we already knew then, right? I did not feel like I didn't learn anything, right? And in part, I'm like, okay, like I understand that, like, those of us who are like really intense about this are kind of, you know, like not the mainstream fan and everything. So like there might be some people out there for whom the idea that this is going to be about the rings, plural, of power and about the forging of the rings might possibly be, you know, news of some kind. But I'm like, but we've figured that out ages and ages ago, you know. So anyway, so I didn't feel like there was any new information. I was kind of hoping to get something new that I could, you know, but I didn't. However, I did feel that there were a whole bunch of confirmations, which were fun to see. And I'd love to kind of talk through some of those a little bit. I just mentioned that I didn't have a chance to do a broadcast on it, but I just kind of tweeted a little thread about it after it came out.
Well, we've got 8 months of content to make until the show comes out. Before we jump into a deeper discussion of what this title means, Cliff, I guess everybody wants to know, how could you keep a secret from everyone for so long? How did we do it?
I am still keeping secrets for current cast members on the current show. And I'm still keeping secrets.
I'm keeping secrets for crew members.
And I'm still keeping secrets for crew members, stunt men and stunt women, and performers from 20 years ago.
And focus pullers and audio people and maybe some editors. We've seen things, Cliff.
You know what? I'm still keeping secrets from my own mama, but don't tell her that. Anyways, the real thing is that the jokes are throwing around online that they spent $750 million just on that, and the other $250 million is for the rest of the TV series. And I would not be surprised, because there's still people to this day who are willing to say, "Oh, that's all CG," and and I'm like, no, they actually went to an extraordinary amount of effort. Now, this is where I sat, Corey. You might also be wondering where, you know, like, it's not like we learned anything huge. We didn't learn anything seismic about the title. It was quite intriguing to drive the title away from people-specific character references. There are no specific geography references. You know what I mean? It's not like Legends of Arda. You know, the reference is to the rings, but not to people or places. So when you're trying to bracket out what they're trying to talk about, they're trying to confine this big nebulous thematic area to the rings of power. Okay, I'm down for that. But
I just want to know, is this clearly about Sauron now? Like, that title is, am I right in saying this is Sauron's story?
Perhaps.
I guess it depends on what you mean by that, right? I didn't get that sense from a like from a first person standpoint or something like that. Like, it's really going to be on him, and mostly it's because we're hearing Galadriel, right? So because we're hearing what I presumed was Galadriel's voice, I'm basically assuming that that the story is being framed from the perspective of Galadriel and the elves. So I wasn't thinking in terms of this is Sauron's story in the sense of like, now let's listen to Sauron tell the story in his own words. Like, not that kind of Sauron story, you know. At least, again, given that it was Galadriel's voice, now if we had gotten a male voice, I would have been really curious, because I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. I would have been like, okay, are we getting Sauron? Are we getting Celebrimbor? Like, whose voice are we getting? That would have been really intriguing to me. But the female voice, I'm like, okay, Galadriel, elf perspective. All right, cool.
Now, but doesn't that raise your eyebrow also, Corey, that we're not going to get a Hobbit-centric perspective the way the Red Book of Westmarch? We're probably really getting an elvish and maybe dwarvish and mannish perspective. And this is something that we should prepare our audience for, really, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder, so one of the things, there's so many things that people have to just get used to the fact that it's just not going to be the same as the Peter Jackson trilogy. Right? I mean, I'm sure you guys heard this a lot too. You know, I heard a lot of people being like, oh, I didn't like the voiceover. And I'm like, I think what you're getting is the that's not Kate Blanchett reaction. You know, like, yes, like you hear the voiceover and you want to hear Kate Blanchett's voice because like that's what you've been listening to for 20 years, right? And it's different. It's not her voice. I don't think it's inferior. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's different. It's not the same, you know? So there's going to be a lot of things like that.
I agree with you very much on that, but I would go further and say they're paying their debts to Peter Jackson.
Oh,
They're-
absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
reason why it is Galadriel's voice and not
Yes.
another male character is
Yeah.
more than a tip of the hat. It's actually
Yes.
like they're indebted. They're almost
Yes.
like, as storytellers, they're paying their debt to what Peter did with that wonderful floating ephemeral introduction that Galadriel gives us. And so I really think that they're paying their debts to PJ at that level.
Yep. I agree. I agree.
Speaking of paying a debt to Peter Jackson, I have the 4 box on screen again because I'm going to show you a Redditor has just put Galadriel's original voiceover from Peter Jackson's films on this trailer. Let's play that right now.
Oh, that's wild. Let's do that.
All right. Hopefully I don't break the audio.
It began with the forging of the great rings. 3 were given to the elves, immortal, wisest and fairest of all beings. 7 to the dwarf lords, great miners and craftsmen of the mountain halls. And 9 rings were gifted to the race of men who above all else desire power. In the land of Mordor, in the fires of Mount Doom, the Dark Lord Sauron forged in secret a master ring. 1 ring to rule them all.
How do you feel about that?
Oh,
Cliff, you're having an emotional reaction right now. Corey, your face was telling on you.
That was really well edited for one thing. I mean, that was beautiful. What I loved about that most is I loved the way that they preserved what the trailer was doing there. The way because I mean, it seems so important to me, the way that they lined up the visuals with the different lines of the ring verse and everything.
Super Dave in the chat room says, hate to say it, it's so much better. Cliff, do you agree?
You know what? I don't know if it's better, but it's freaking awesome. It's freaking awesome. It's just that is the ultimate in nerd service. And I'm going to say thank you to the Redditor who posted that. I think that's pretty ballsy to that's what I said in the YouTube chat, because someone is like throwing it back at Amazon, like we see you and we know this is the Galadriel connection you want us to make. Right. And so we're making it. We're making that Galadriel connection. I think it bodes well that so many people were pleased. There was not, and I didn't see any negative clapback or negativity about the title reveal. And I didn't hear anybody really complain. Most people were just taken aback by the intensive efforts that they did to even make it look this way and to feel this way, to feel organic,
Yeah.
It's interesting. People in the chat room are commenting on how Cate Blanchett's voice is deeper than Morfydd Clark. So even though they both are the same age, Morfydd Clark is the same age now as Cate Blanchett was when she filmed her Galadriel speech. So I mean, that's the first big departure. It almost feels like I agree with you, Corey. Maybe a male voice would have been more mysterious. And
would have been more mysterious, but as I said, I like it. I even like the differences. I really do. I mean, I love the Cate Blanchett voiceover, but I was really interested to hear something different. And what's more, even the quality of the difference. Several people were saying, like in my Twitter exchanges, some people were saying she sounds, like a teenager, and I'm like, yeah, That's what I like about it. That's what I like about it. This
Me
is
too.
young peppery Galadriel we're getting here. She should be, you know, she's like, we're talking about, this is a Galadriel who's what, like 5,000 years younger? Like, it's a big deal. And especially since I've been now for goodness, since September, since Bilbo's birthday, I've been doing the Nature of Middle-earth, going through chapter by chapter in the Nature of Middle-earth, and I'm this far since September. Anyway, so needless to say, we spent like 4 months doing all of like Tolkien's aging charts and stuff in the first section of this book. And he calculates and recalculates Galadriel's age and her age equivalent, like what age she would have been in mortal equivalency at various points in the story. Like 4 or 5 times. Like, it's one of his test cases as he was trying to work out his like world building system, how elves age and how the calendar should work and everything. Galadriel kept being a test case that he kept coming back to. And the moral of the story was, what was really clear, what he pictured is that when she came over from Valinor, right? When she crossed the Helcaraxa and came into Beleriand, she was like 18. She was like 20 maybe. She was like just barely of age. Like, she was a very, very young adult. By the time we get to the end of the first age, right, beginning of the second age, she's like barely of marriageable age. Like, she and Celeborn get married after that, but so like basically early second age, we're looking at like mid-20s Galadriel, right? So like young professional Galadriel, you know, still relatively fresh out of college, is like the kind of age range that Galadriel should be as far as her age equivalent is concerned. That's very much how Tolkien pictured her. And again, you can tell because he kept reworking his system if the numbers didn't work out right, you know, and she didn't turn out to be that age, you know, that was the age that he wants her, that he was imagining her as being. So yeah, like Galadriel should not be, we're used to thinking of her from the third age, from the end of the third age perspective, right? She is by far one of the elder statesmen of Middle Earth. Like, she is one of the eldest, the wisest, and
by the time we see her in the third age, she's exhausted.
Yes. And several of those age calculations, he has her as like nearing old age. Like, she's not elderly yet, but she is like on the cusp. She's like almost retirement age by the end of the third age in elf equivalencies. But it's one of the cool things about this show. Galadriel should be in a completely different life place, right? She is like, again, she's like peppery young professional on the make at the time of this. And so
like,
it should,
the age thing is like calling it young Galadriel and young Elrond in the context of elvish ages that has been in the fan debate for 2 years now. Cliff, what's your opinion of kind of like revealing young Galadriel's voice in this matter? Are you happy to finally like hear how she sounds, or
Actually, I'm very happy to hear how she sounds, but I want the fandom to stop worrying that we're going to get it's not going to be 13 going on 30, where Galadriel is she's not going to be transposed into a teenager body and we're not going to get like the Pippi Longstocking, adventures of Galadriel. This is unreasonable to have that kind of fear. However, it's also reasonable to have some anxiety because we don't know what the writer's room are doing with these characters. But to have her presented with a different experience and a different level of wisdom, a different life XP, okay? Her XP points aren't at the same level of XP that she has later in the third age. And the very fact that using a ring of power transforms people, it takes a lot out of her in her career. She ends up like getting very, very as close as anyone ever gets to what Professor Tolkien means when he says, I'm interested in this being about death and the pursuit of deathlessness. Out of all the pantheon of characters, I do believe that Galadriel is the one that, in my mind, most tangibly gets closest to that thematic construct. If you might, this is debatable. You might want to, debate the levels of this. But from my understanding, her using the ring that she has changes her in an effort to recreate a miniature dominion in Middle Earth when she's supposed to be going back to Valinor. Instead, she's interested in using this side power, which is partly Sauron gifted side power, to deny herself the metaphysical fulfillment of going back to Valinor. Instead, she's busy making a little umbrella of a miniature Valinor to slow down time. And even Peter Jackson has the sense to increase the rate of film, to slow down the speed of film when we're watching Fellowship of the Ring. Why is it everything seems to be going so slow? That's because of the elven ring that she's using. And it's all very impressive to me. I would like to remind people that we're going to get a version of Galadriel who has not been burdened with those concerns. She has not been burdened with those powers, and she hasn't used those powers to extend her life and her time span in avoidance of her ultimate callback to Valinor. Am I crazy thinking this, Corey, or what?
No, not at all. I agree with that, with burdens and stuff. But here's, though, the main thing that I wonder. And I'll say this fairly aggressively. I think it would be entirely justifiable, based on the text and what we know of Galadriel, for the writer's room to write her as one of the real problems of this series, at least of the early part. Her to be an agitator, her to be this close to antagonist almost.
Really?
Because she's, I mean, people, again, we see her at the tail end of her career, right?
Yes.
And this is like her last and final temptation. She has learned a lot. She's learned a lot since her early days. And these are still not quite her totally early days, right? She's had the whole experience of the First Age in the Age of the Sun in Beleriand and the war with Morgoth and stuff. And she spent time with Melian, which probably mellowed her some, but she is, I mean, if there is, when you think about the elves in Middle Earth, if there is a place, if there is a hotspot of potential ally for Sauron, people who are going to be most tempted by the Rings of Power, people who Galadriel is got to be close. She's forging kingdoms. She's wanting to rule a land of her own. I can see her being a danger, like a real threat, like that there being some real concern that she is going to turn or even ally with Sauron. And imagine how people are going to react if they do that with her character, right? So I'm just going on record to say at the beginning, I think I'm not saying they're going to do that. I'm not predicting it or saying I would love to see it, but I'm saying if they went even as far as that to make her like this close to an antagonist in the show, or at least on the cutting edge of threatening to turn, I think that there's plenty of textual justification for depicting Second Age Galadriel in that way, as being, on the edge.
On the edge and having to be tested, like when Gandalf says, against some things I have not yet been tested. But let's see. I agree with that. You know what? I really like the way you think. Now, in my mind, we know that Gil-galad and Elrond shut the door in Anatar's face. Yep. So Galadriel and Celebrimbor, however, are like open arms. Teach us this cool stuff. Galadriel is like, I have a little bit of an inkling of that Fëanorian urge.
She's the free agent, right?
Exactly.
Celebrimbor, we know, is going to work with Sauron. Gil-galad and Elrond, we know are not. Galadriel, though, she's a free agent, right? We don't know where she's going to go.
I keep coming back to Peter Jackson's movies, which this may or may not be connected to. We don't know. But Peter Jackson definitely sets up Galadriel in the third Hobbit movie as someone that is most powerful against Sauron. And her ring and her power somehow is stronger than Elrond and Gandalf put together. So in my mind, there's a part of this show that goes into why Galadriel has such power against that particular being.
Right. It will be fascinating to build history between Sauron and Galadriel directly. I agree. I think that's going to be really fascinating to see. And how is that going to be? Again, what was Galadriel doing in the Second Age? Well, in one version of the Galadriel story, empire building is what she's doing. Like, it's potentially really sketchy. And
I've been told that Numenor is the one that's doing empire building, and they're the one that are clearing all the forests. And Numenor is like the Britain, the England of the Second Age. You know, putting their tentacles in all the lands.
Sort of, yeah, definitely. In that way, absolutely. But again, she's building alliances. She's the most sort of politically aggressive thinker of all of the elves. Like, she's the one who reaches out to the dwarves and establishes that. And in one version of the story, Tolkien, in one version of her story, the problem is Tolkien never wrote any of this stuff out, right? He had all these ideas, and his ideas about Galadriel changed, and we don't get like a definitive version of the Galadriel story, which I suppose the Amazon people probably delighted about, because it gives them more of a blank slate.
To that point, obviously the appendices are this big. Like, I want to know how to react and defend against this accusation that is constant on Twitter of this isn't true to Tolkien. And you just said Tolkien never wrote anything about Galadriel. So
no.
how do you balance true to Tolkien and not true to Tolkien?
You have to do it with this kind of thing. You have to do it in the only way that you can do. And that's like inductively, basically. There's not a question of, are they changing the story? There are some elements that they might change, but we're not going to be able to judge on that basis. I mean, like, how much do we know about Gil-galad's character? Almost nothing. We get almost nothing of Gil-galad's character.
I don't know anything
about Celebrimbor. Almost nothing about Celebrimbor. I mean, we know the basics, like what Gandalf tells Frodo in the parlor at Bag End in chapter 2 of the Fellowship of the Ring is like 75% of all we know about Celebrimbor, right? Like, we don't know much about that, that whole area we don't know much about. And so therefore, if most of the time that people are going to be reacting, if people have that kind of reaction, like, oh, they're deviating from Tolkien, the majority of the time it's going to be, and some people might not even realize this. Like, I've built up this idea in my head about Galadriel's history, or about Celebrimbor, or about Gil-galad, and what you're doing is different from what's in my head, but it's not in the text. There's very little text about this. So again, but when I say, so to me, what matters is you've got to take the story that they're taking, you've got to give that story a chance, see what it is that they're telling, and look at that story and think about that really carefully, and then do some comparison and contrast. Think about Tolkien. Does it fit? Does it work in Tolkien's world? Can it be, is it making sense? Does it seem to kind of fit there, and why or why not? And that's the only kind of question. There's very little primary source material to work with on all of this stuff. I mean, there's Of the Rings of Power and the Third Age at the end of the Silmarillion, but even that's super sketchy. Hey,
hold on, wait. Amazon only has rights to the appendices.
Yeah, obviously. Oh, yeah. By
the way, the show that they are making is the appendices. You just said that there's a chapter called Of the Rings of Power in the Silmarillion. Wait, the show is...
I'm beginning to get a sneaking suspicion that they might not just be using the appendices. Yeah. And by the way, everything I've been saying about Galadriel and Galadriel's history is drawn from the Galadriel and Celeborn chapter in Unfinished Tales, which, like, the very first thing that became obvious when they very first began to release images, the map, like when they first released the map, as soon as they released the very first map image, it was obvious that they were drawing on Unfinished Tales as well. So, and that, I think that's
Cliff. So what's your take on this? The show is called The Rings of Power. The penultimate chapter of the Silmarillion is Of the Rings of Power. what's your expert opinion right now?
There's there's quite a lot. There's quite a lot of leeway to talk about the people who are corrupted by the rings of power and tempted by them. There's a lot of room to talk about the person who created them, or I should say, two persons. It's a dyad, perhaps. And there's a lot of room to talk about world building and destruction. A lot of destruction happens with all of it tied to just the rings themselves. But in terms of a deeper, there's a great awareness in our chat with some wonderful, wonderful people. Robert Hill has said, and very adroitly observed in the YouTube chat, that there might also be a bit of subtext with the Noldor trying to make something beautiful and powerful and lasting that isn't as catastrophic as the Silmarils. There's some pride there. Yes, Noldorin pride. There is something to be said. We know thematically that they can carry that stuff over in the narrative, even if they don't license everything from the Silmarillion. We can get a good sense of her history. We're going to get flashbacks to Valinor, right? When I say her, I mean Galadriel.
Galadriel,
yeah. There is something about that, about wanting to execute power in terms of empire building that isn't going to be the previous disasters that they've experienced. Trying to do it right, not the first time, but trying to do it right the third or fourth time.
Right, exactly.
And Professor Tolkien has given us a lot of leeway in his notes, his historical bullet points in the appendix in the back of Return of the King. There's leeway for the writers to cover that, but I hope that they do. I hope that they really, really, really make a conscious effort to keep the larger concepts in mind that we know drove Professor Tolkien to be a writer and to explore this in his world. At least the title didn't sound like a cheap video game. At least I'm grateful for that.
That is very true. And as I bring up on screen for those watching at home, we're live on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at the same time. And this is the photo that Amazon released last summer. You can see the two trees in the back. We had a multi-hour discussion when this dropped with an all-star panel, and none of us got it right. That character in the middle is Finrod, and Finn is. So let me ask you this: is it significant that Galadriel is the voiceover in the title reveal, and is there a connection between Galadriel and this character that we saw in the first teaser photo?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, they're siblings. So Galadriel is Finrod's little sister. And of course, it was one of the things that we were speculating at the time when we learned when we got the Finrod reveal, that it did seem to foreground when we were trying to answer the question, why are we getting a Finrod flashback to Valinor? Like, a flashback to Valinor made all kinds of sense, especially in the context of a first episode and establishing the backstory and everything. But why Finrod at the center of it? It seemed an odd choice in a lot of ways, but one of the potential sort of clearest relevances of Finrod to the story that we were getting was the Galadriel connection. That was essentially not a Finrod flashback. It was a Galadriel flashback with her brother in the foreground, basically.
So Cliff, should we read? Should we? Is there more to be read into Galadriel's voiceover in this title announcement?
No, they're just trying. I think this is a marketing effort to make a callback to Peter Jackson.
Definitely.
We can take it from there, and we can even leave it there if we want. Okay,
Right.
But in terms of what we want as a fandom, since we're in this sweet position to broadcast and tell everybody before they go into seasons 2, 3, 4, and 5, or maybe seasons 6 and 7. Before they get there, we get to tell them what we expect, what we're excited about, what we would love to see in this adaptation. And what they're showing us is, expensive practical effects hard to produce, very satisfying, with specific character callbacks to a cinematic relationship we've had for 20 years. We, as a fandom, have had a relationship with the books all of our lives as book readers. And for 20 years, we've had a relationship with the films. And they're acknowledging that. They're acknowledging that to us. The biggest question is what they're going to show and reveal at the Super Bowl. And I'm really intrigued by people who want to do good in Arda getting confused and waylaid by Sauron. This is going to be the grist in the mill that we're going to get most of our satisfying punch in our stories. We know at the end of the road what happens to our Farazan. We know what happens to Celebrimbor.
I don't.
No, you do. We've talked about the destruction of Numenor many times on this. Come on,
Yeah,
like we know who does not get duped by Sauron, and so we're going to see a lot of conflict in display between those people who are easily led astray and those who are not led astray. And doesn't that ultimately feed back to Professor Tolkien? He was very interested in that type of thing in all of his writing. Who had the strength of spirit to not be led astray, and who would easily succumb to that taste for power, or things that are beyond their, the veil of what this world has in store for you. You know what I'm talking about, Corey, don't you?
Yeah, I do. And I picking up on something you just said, because I think it's really important. I think that you're right. The way in which they're grounding both, and equally, and I think equally powerfully, both grounding this new show, both in the Peter Jackson tradition and in the books, right? And just to illustrate that, I was just reaching over to my bookshelf here, because to illustrate that, here's my old copy of Fellowship of the Ring, the old Houghton Mifflin paperbacks here from ages ago, right? So you open this and you get to the title page, right? And then what's right inside the title page?
The ring verse.
The ring verse, right? And after the ring verse comes the table of contents, and then you start the book, right? So like when you open most copies of The Lord of the Rings, the ring verse on its own page like this is what you see, right? So
that's true. That's true. I noticed that when I saw the Ballantine books when I was a little child, when I read them.
And that's what they gave us in the trailer, right? It's nothing. Like they literally said nothing else other than the ring verse, right? Like we just like that blank page with the ring verse on it. So I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. The way in which they're basically, and I think it's especially important since what they're actually going to cover, like the storyline they're actually covering, is conspicuously not in this book, right? Like they're not starting at they're not, unlike Peter Jackson, they're not starting with Frodo in the Shire and Gandalf arriving for the long expected party, right? They're not starting the Lord of the Rings story in a sense at the Lord of the Rings, right? They're starting it before where the Lord of the Rings story begins historically.
Hang on. All right, I just pulled this from the box that Amazon had sent Cliff and I. All right, this is the 3-book edition. With the bookmark where the appendices are. You're telling me that Amazon, with this title reveal, basically gave us the front cover of their book, of their new book, and you're telling me that if I open up, I get a title of the book, I get the title of the book, and you're telling me this next page should be the ring verse?
Probably. Chances are. Oh, there it is.
Oh my God. What is this?
Yeah.
The
ring verse by itself.
The ring verse is so that's what Amazon's doing with their marketing. They're basically replicating this book by sending Cliff this book. And then they gave us the title, and then they gave us the ring verse, and they put the bookmark where the appendices start. Annals of the Kings of Rulers, Numenorian Kings.
I wish I had seen the conversation or heard the conversation between Professor Tolkien and his publisher, Rainer Unwin, saying, put that ring verse as a frontispiece completely by itself in the front. I wish I had been there to hear that conversation.
Well, speaking of ring verse, this is what I wanted to...
I also wanted to say it's pretty cool that they're still doing that and that they're still honoring Professor Tolkien, who obviously wished it to be this way. All these years later, these new publications and these new editions They're still doing it according to his wish.
According to Tolkien's wishes, and now Amazon is following suit with Tolkien's own wishes. I mean, credit where credit is due. I wanted to bring this up. There's some behind the scenes photos that we'll get to in a second, but I wanted to bring this up that I love Twitter because we go deep into things that no one else would. As the One Ring, it used to be on our message board and our IRC channels. Now everything's on Twitter and Discord. But someone basically screenshotted the title of the title treatment. If you notice on the final frame of the title of the Rings of Power, there is an inscription in the metal letters, and someone basically carved that out of the video frame and put those here. And so that's the R, that's the I of the title. And then our friends at the Tolkien Guide have spent the last week diving in and basically saying this is what is etched on the thing, and basically it's the Ringverse. So kudos to Amazon for putting the Ringverse on the ring. Now,
one additional thought: if they're only telling us they've licensed the appendices, obviously they've licensed other parts of the book, because the Ringverse does not appear in in any appendix. There's your proof. There's your proof. They're licensing other parts of the book, not just the appendix.
Well, we know for sure that because Cliff, it's in the prologue of this edition where Harfoots are mentioned.
That's
Corey,
true.
are Harfoots mentioned in your Fellowship book right there? Is there a prologue in that?
Yeah, the prologue is here. Sure, the Concerning Hobbits prologue. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So we know Harfoots are going to be in the show, and we know they're in the prologue.
Falahides, yeah.
Yeah, the Falahides and the Harfoots. And so we know that Amazon has licensed everything in this book.
At least.
But they just have been told they cannot retell the story that Peter Jackson told.
That's right. So we're not going to have any conversation about the War of the Ring. We'll have a different war, the War of the Elves and Sauron, and it will be over rings. It will be over the ring issue. The issue, and that will ultimately lead to a lot of other crazy stuff. And ultimately, Sauron will be taken prisoner willingly to Numenor. We can start his process of evil and corruption, and to pull his whole stunt that he's got to pull on Numenor. This means we're more comfortable than ever talking about the time frame of the show being set later in the Second Age, near the end of the Second Age. Yes,
I will say this is the one thing that I think I learned anyway, that I didn't know for sure. We had speculated about it, but I didn't know it for sure. And it was not in the trailer. It was in the little interview that was released along with it by the director or somebody released. Somebody said, I saw this. My sources are horrible right now. I saw somewhere on the internet, that no, seriously, there was somebody from the show. It was in the story that the video was embedded in that I saw it. Was it in The Guardian? Anyway, I think it was one of the showrunners who said that the series is ending with the Last Alliance. The first season is ending with the Last Alliance.
The first season?
Really?
I think they're building up to
the Last Alliance.
I
was going to say that can't. That's too much. That's way too much.
I would expect that to be the end of season 7, maybe.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, I would think they'd be building up for a long time. I was really surprised by that. Voice of Geekdom is telling me that it was the showrunners released a statement. That's what I saw. They mentioned the Last Alliance in it, which surprised me. Okay, the whole show.
Okay. I have the actual quote. I have the actual quote in my notes because we got the same thing that the Guardian got. So, quote.
Oh.
This is a title that we imagine could live on the spine of a book next to J.R.R. Tolkien's other classics. The Rings of Power unites all the major stories of Middle-earth's Second Age. The Forging of the Rings, the Rise of the Dark Lord Sauron, the Epic Tale of Numenor, and the last alliance of elves and men.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
means
The
they're really
reference-
going to go all the way to that end. That's wow. Go ahead, Corey. Sorry.
Yeah, no, so that's the part that I was like, okay, I was really glad to get confirmation of that, and that's where they were headed to.
That's what they're covering. It's not that the first season's going to end. The entire series.
I was gonna say that was my first reaction when I read that. I'm like, you're not actually going to try to do all that in one season, are you? Okay, phew, good. That's good. That's good. Yeah.
Now, Cliff, before we jump into the next segment, I wanted to play a little video that we finally are able to publish. I think I posted this on social. But folks, Cliff and I were lucky enough to be invited over to check everything out when they were making this title announcement video and they were pouring the metal. So here is Cliff and my first reaction. When they literally had it under a black cloth, and they're like, "Are you guys ready?" Like you're literally the first in the world to know. They literally were like saying that there are crew members that don't even know the actual title. They kept this a secret from everybody, and then they pulled a big reveal. And here is Cliff's first reaction to
my
this.
gosh.
Let's go here.
Something entirely different, and I'm glad I was wrong. I'm glad I was wrong. Because I thought that there was going to be something like, this is so cool. This is really, really cool. Because it doesn't sound like a generic video game title, which is something that is too easy to fall into. This is great. This is great. Do you know what? Less emphasis on characters, more emphasis on history and a larger context.
It's about rings. It's always about rings.
It's always about rings.
It's always been about rings. It's always going to be about rings.
Do you know what? A lot of people are going to be quite surprised by this, I think. This is pretty cool. This is really, really, really cool. I think. What do you think?
Yes.
You got it right. I had no idea.
Of course it's going to be this.
Sound right
Oops.
now.
Oh, okay, there it is. Yeah, just
Okay,
know
sound is
that
back.
every question that we have for you is intentful. Corey was just saying that he doesn't know anything about this show.
I know nothing.
And my lawyers want to tell you that we don't know anything either.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, I'm and I really admire you guys. Like I would find it really hard to keep all the secrets that you guys are keeping. I'm like, I'm good. And I love the anticipation so much. I enjoy doing like interpretation. I wouldn't want to know, especially before the trailer comes out. Right, especially before the trailer comes out. I really look forward to seeing the trailer, not knowing what's going to happen. Like that's I'm.
I like that. I often avoid marketing materials and trailers for a movie experience that I want to have on its own. And it was very, very, very hard to avoid the trailers for Spider-Man No Way Home. It was really hard to avoid a marketing machine that is as big as Disney/Marvel. Now we're talking about a new level where Amazon Studios hasn't really gone before. They don't. I mean, they've successfully marketed TV shows like The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and The Boys and other TV shows, but they haven't marketed The Lord of the Rings to a worldwide crazy thirsty audience. So we still have yet to see, and we'll see when we find out what their best dollars are going to be spent on in terms of marketing. And we've got the release of a blank map, and then we had the release of a map with lots of second age terms on it, which certainly Corey will attest to this. It helped us realize a time frame of narrative, and now we've got a title reveal. Yeah, there. Show it to the folks at home, Corey. It's Unfinished Tales. I love it.
Saying. I'm just saying. Perfectly obvious.
So, Cliff.
I love it. So yeah, we're really gonna get to a position where we're going to be debating the merits of their marketing campaign as much as we'll be debating the quality of the show and the writing and the production within. So we have a lot to talk about. It's going to be a very big ride. In terms of popular culture, we as a fandom better brace ourselves for a wild ride, because it's coming. It's coming down the tracks.
Last week we did a whole show just hours before this global announcement. How did you keep a straight face last week? I'm asking you, how did you keep a straight face last week on this show?
I'm still trying to keep a straight face for some of the other things that I'm not supposed to be talking about.
Now, Cliff,
honest, I'm trying to not. And Corey, I want to say so many things to you right now. Justin and I want to talk to you about so many things, but we have to shut our mouth. Or
That's fine. That's right.
to quote my favorite '90s cartoon from Cow and Chicken, I need to shut my pie hole. Okay, that's it. Shut my pie hole.
No, Cliff. We have talked. We have been honest with what's going on for the last 5 years since Amazon got the rights, and we've done our fair share of reporting, Cliff, that there's been rumors and talk that first marketing video that Amazon put out over 2 years ago that showed the writer's room, showed the showrunners, showed John Howe and Tom Shippey, doing things. And this was before the map, and then they released the map. And then it became apparent that Tom Shippey was only brought in to work on the map, and John Howe was only brought in to draw the map. And that video misconstrued the strength of their involvement. So I don't know about you, Cliff, but I had some reservations going into this set visit. It's like, it's not the set. We know they already filmed it. And then there's this video, and they're putting all this effort into just a title reveal. Like, this isn't even the title of the show. And we asked, is this part of the show? It's not part of the show. It's not the title of the show.
Meaning the opening credits sequence.
The opening
it's not
credits.
the opening credits. Not the opening. Yeah.
So, do you think this is do you think all of this effort is a course correction on Amazon's part to do right by fans in all the ways that we just spent an hour talking about and getting excited about, and all the things that Corey pointed out in its relation to the books? Do you think this is a right turn in the right direction of what Amazon's doing?
Yeah, well, we've been complaining for a long time that we weren't getting anything. So we're happy to be getting this little drip. That's all we're getting, right?
Yes.
Corey.
Hey, the image was awesome. I'd like to. Could we talk through the trailer a little bit? There are a couple things I'd like to, because as I said, I feel bad. I feel I didn't answer some people's questions because I didn't have a chance, and Twitter was not the time for a long exposition on this.
Right. Now, also, Julia was asking us, Justin, when were we there? Can we confess when we were there at the Forge for the filming of this?
That information has not been cleared for release. I don't know what we can talk about. We were there.
We were there, but I can't say when. Okay, but go ahead, Corey. Please go ahead. Yes, let's.
While you're talking, I'm going to try to bring up the trailer so we can do a side by side.
That'd be good, because there's one part of the trailer that I think I don't fully get. Let me talk about what I'm talking about. What to me was most interesting, like where I felt that the title trailer was most meaty, right? The place where I felt like we were receiving a whole bunch of confirmations. In one place, a really obvious confirmation, obvious if you know the story, and in another place, what I felt to be a fairly clear confirmation. But then the other place but there was one place that I didn't know, I wasn't sure I understood the significance of. And what I'm talking about is what we're seeing, the imagery that we're seeing on the screen when they get to particular lines of the ring verse, in particular, the elf line, the dwarf line, and the human line. And what images they show us on screen. Those were the things where I felt I was kind of, even just the first time I watched it, I was like checking boxes in my head and I'm like, yep, okay, right, okay, I see that, right? So for instance, one of the people were asking me on Twitter, where did I see, because I immediately tweeted and said, yeah, so you know, they've confirmed that they're doing the Fall of Numenor. They've confirmed that they're doing Khazad-dûm, and they were like, wait, where did you see the confirmation of Khazad-dûm? And I'm like, I can explain that, but not on a tweet. So I want to show that. But the elf line. So let's start at the beginning. Okay, hang on a second. Pause for a second. Okay. All right. So the first thing that is so cool about this is I love how from the very beginning it's really unclear what we're looking at, right? It looks like those first two shots especially look like a canyon, right? I mean, it looks like landscape. It looks like it could be landscape anyway, like it could be mistaken for landscape. And in fact, that's true until we see the molten metal and the fire coming down, right? It's really not, I mean, it doesn't look like, you know, it looks like a sort of like a sunset there, right? It's not until here that's like, oh, okay, hang on a second, that's a trickle of molten metal, which means that's probably wood grain rather than like, you know, the side of the Grand Canyon kind of look, right? Like a natural canyon. So first of all, the way that those two things, so what we have conceptually here, therefore, is a juxtaposition between the concept of forging something, right? Like the molten metal and the making of an object, and landscape, like the forging of the land, the shaping of the world, of the continents. Now, and that's obviously earlier on in the Second Age, we're not still shaping the continents, but the way in which that seems to nod towards this sort of really, really big picture thing. And that looked, the very first thing looked like a disaster, right? Like, again, when the fire sweeps in, because if you have at first the impression that you're looking at landscape, that you're looking at canyons or a desert landscape maybe, or something like that, then the flames come in and it looks like the Dagor Bragollach. It looks like a catastrophe, right? And then we hear that it's there. So, and I love the way that builds this foreboding, right? Because of course the ring verse is talking about the forging of the Ring of Power. It is what Celebrimbor overheard. And this is the bit I don't understand. So I'm going to want to go back for a minute in a second here. Anyway, so I love the way that they build the foreboding there, right? By having the ring verse in the background when the fire coming forward. You say, oh no, they're just forging something. This is an act of construction, not an act of destruction, which it looks like at first, right? It's not an act of destruction. It's an act of construction. And yet, really ominous, really scary looking. Okay, so from here, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. As soon as she says 7 is when we see the metal pouring down for the first time, right? So you have like the instead of just seeing the molten metal itself running along the tracks, here we see it being poured down. It's the first time we get a vertical pour of it, right? So this act of forging, right? And here's where I see Khazad-dûm coming up. And it's here, but that's it. Pause. This right here, this precise moment, perfect pause. Because of course, the story of Khazad-dûm in the Second Age, first and foremost, is the story of their partnership with Celebrimbor and their alliance with Celebrimbor. And
yes, very much so. Very much looking forward to that part of the story.
Me too. And here comes the wild card again. Galadriel too. Galadriel was good friends with the dwarves of Khazad-dûm. What's her role going to be there? How is she going to be? We get Celebrimbor, and we're going to get the dwarves and Galadriel. How does that work out? I don't know. But the way that and this is the only place, everywhere else in the trailer, when we're watching the molten metal, we're watching one branch of we're watching it creep through, right? The one thread of metal creeping through. This is the one place where we see two different like forged things coming together, right? And that is what, and that is happening while we're getting the 7 for the dwarf lords, and specifically in their halls of stone is what she is saying at the moment that we're seeing these two things coming together, which is where I see clearly Khazad-dûm alliance with the elves, the Noldor, ringsmith forgers and the dwarvish craftsmen coming together. That's what I'm seeing in this image and how I see that connecting, which is so cool. And now here comes the obvious one. Keep playing. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. Here it comes. Which mortal men? Oh, those mortal men. Yes, drowning of Numenor, like neon sign, drowning of Numenor with the water flooding in right at the time when
that is fan service right there. That is because even casual fans know that men die in a flooded island. Like this was the immediate like, okay, they're doing this on purpose.
Well, no, part of me was they talked a great deal about how excited they were to shoot the different types of shots where they were rushing a water gate that would open up and pour the water over the molten surface. And part of my mind is they just wanted to use those shots because they look good. The other part of my mind is maybe they were clever enough to visually know what the motif would suggest. And it is it's more than highly suggestive. It's very much on the nose. It's very on the nose. So absolutely. I'm like, I don't know whether they knew or maybe they just wanted to use that gorgeous photography that they had. I don't know, but
come on,
I'd like to give them credit. I would like to give them credit.
Throwing water over it with that dialogue, like
timed with the words "doomed to die." I mean, come on! It's like again, like this was like the clearest telegraphing of Numenor. Besides which, come on, like.
That's awesome, though. Yeah, it is awesome. I have to say that everybody
awesome.
Jumped on that quickly. Everyone jumped on that before they jumped on anything else. So I'll go along with it. It's really cool. It's really cool.
It's very cool. It's very cool. And again, like, say, Cliff, never think I'm asking you to confirm or deny anything. Like, it's fine. I'm just telling you what I see. I'm just telling you what I see. And I wouldn't be you for anything right now. I'm so happy to be doing my half of this conversation right now.
Oh my God.
I just get to say whatever I see, and it doesn't matter because I don't know.
Bless your heart. I love it. That's awesome.
Hey, is there anything to this? I'm not very familiar with the timeline. When is the Dark Lord on his dark throne? Is after Numenor or before Numenor?
Well, both.
It took a long time to build, right?
No. I mean, the destruction of Numenor. That like, it is the Dark Lord on his dark throne for the destruction of Numenor.
So first first the Dark Lord is on his dark throne. Then the Numenorians come and mop the floor with him, right, and bring him back to Numenor. And then he establishes a new dark throne in Numenor, and then Numenor sinks. And then he goes back and reestablishes his dark throne back home. And which, by the way, I have so many questions. Like I'm just like full of questions, which I emphasize, I'm not expecting an answer. That is to say, I can't wait to see what they do in the future. But here's one of the questions that I'm going to be looking for. This is, to me, one of the biggest challenges. If I were, if I were writing this show, this would be like near the very top of my list. Like, how on earth are we going to handle this, right? What does Sauron do with the Ring of Power when he's in Numenor? It's the biggest question. And like those, because the thing is, historically speaking, as far as Tolkien is concerned, like in Tolkien's writing, those two stories emerged more or less independently. Like the story of Sauron as the tempter of Numenor predates the existence of the Rings of Power. Like the Rings of Power were not a glimmer in Tolkien's eye when he wrote the story of Sauron going to Numenor and causing the drowning of Numenor. Like that came well before the establishment of any of the rings of the Ring of Power didn't exist when he wrote that story originally. Right.
Well, that's pretty cool to know. That's really cool to know that.
Then he goes and he writes the Rings of Power story, right? Mm-hmm. And now there's this problem, see, right? Because he's got the Rings of Power story, which has to, like, the forging of the Rings of Power have to predate Numenor, right? Like the drowning of Newark, the Sauron in Numenor era, right? That has to happen. He can't have his ring with him, or else it's going to the bottom of the ocean when Numenor goes down, because his body goes down with the ship. Well, island, right? So he can't have it with him. So what does he do with it? Like, put it in a safe deposit box? Like, he kind of, like, he in one sentence kind of glances over this, that he set aside his ring and went to Numenor without his ring. But it's really, like, hard to swallow. Like, there's basically, like, those two stories Tolkien put together, but there's a seam. You can see the seam between those two stories still in the way that Tolkien has it in his published work, probably because it was one of the posthumous things that was published. He never really, he never finished ironing that out. So to me, this is going to be one of the really, like, they have the challenge here of taking those two stories, which Tolkien wrote independently of each other, Sauron and the forging of the Rings of Power, and everything that means in Middle Earth and with Celebrimbor and the Elven Rings and everything else, and Numenor, and Sauron in Numenor, and Sauron is causing the overthrow of Numenor. And how do those stories connect? How do they come together? And again, Tolkien never totally reconciled those two, really, not perfectly, not seamlessly. And so I'm going to be, that's way high on my list. Galadriel, like, what are we going to get? Rogue Galadriel? Are we going to get, like, how feisty is she going to be? I don't know. That's one of my main questions. How are they going to handle the ring is another one. I have lots of questions, but anyway,
let's go back. Let's cap this video off.
I want to actually say that Professor Tolkien addressed the floating ring across the ocean concept in one of his letters, didn't he?
So, well, I mean, he he definitely, yeah.
I remember him saying that one need not boggle that the ring itself would be, able to take the trip across the sundering seas, and as his disembodied form carries it.
Right, that he kind of brought it back, but which is in contradiction to what it says in the other thing. So, like, you can see him kind of thinking about it both ways. Like, he says in Of the Rings of Power in the Third Age, he says that he set his ring aside. But then in the letter, he does speculate, maybe he could have brought it. I mean, you can see him, and he's always doing this in his letter. He's brainstorming. He brainstormed all the times in his letter. Like,
yes.
He might as well have said, what if this, you think that's possible? I don't know, maybe. Like, that's kind of how he did. People often want to quote his letters as, like, definitive proof of what he thought. And it's like, sometimes, but often, again, he was spitballing with people, which
fair
is
enough.
Cool, by the way.
Fair enough.
That's the whole thing with the latest Nature of Middle Earth book, is that, like, even after it was published, he was still tweaking things.
Oh, completely. Yeah. Now, the difference, though, is that he does, he's very consistent about, in almost all cases, taking the published text of The Lord of the Rings as an established text. Like, he doesn't just change it or try to revise it. He tries to deal with what the text says and find explanations that would explain. So if he changes his mind, he'll change his mind, but then he'll try to find ways to explain why, given that that's not the real story. Why did the text say this? Right? And so he'll find ways to explain it. And very occasionally he will introduce the possibility that there was a scribal error. Like when the, Tale of Years was compiled in Gondor, like, the scribes probably made a mistake there, but he doesn't do that very often. Like, that's like, a desperate attempt there.
A little trivia on this before, so I can put this video away. So that smoke and that water is not water, because the way water interacts with molten aluminum is not. It's kind of like pouring water on a grease fire. You don't want to do that. If your kitchen, if your stovetop is on fire, you don't pour water on it. Like water and grease don't mix. Water and aluminum don't mix. It's very dangerous. So this is liquid nitrogen.
It's liquid nitrogen, really?
This is liquid nitrogen that is super cold. and that is what it is cooling the molten metal, the molten aluminum. And then this is argon, gaseous argon and nitrogen as they pull over and around. So there's like 2 or 3 shots that are composited together. Again, Cliff, we got into some Twitter arguments with visual effects professionals that said, this is CG. Like justfully so, visual effects people are kind of frustrated that they don't get any credit for this. But Cliff, we saw this exact shot filmed multiple times, didn't we?
Yes, we saw it in person, and yes, it is absolutely a physical thing where they put their crew they really put their working photography crew through their paces. It was not the easiest set to be on, with extreme temperatures and high-end, high-tech camera equipment that could get burned, melted, or incinerated with one wrong move. Not to mention losing half of your leg. If somebody had one small accident, you'd lose half your leg or worse. So there was risk, genuine physical risk involved. And I am surprised that they didn't make us put out an insurance policy or a waiver just to have us come and visit and get as close as we got to the forge and the components that were there. But it was all physical and painstaking. And believe it or not, it is not wood. It is not a wooden frame into which they are pouring the molten alloy. It is compressed sand, a unique process of making a compressed sand sculpture. And it is stratified to make it look like wood grain when you cut into it. Yeah, they
basically took a mold of an old piece of reclaimed wood and then used that mold and poured a sand mixture in it, so that they could literally do this with tons of different metals, tons of different gases on it without burning up their only piece of wood, basically.
Right. Yeah.
That's so cool. Yes, these are noble gases for a noble title.
Noble gases, and yes, Julia, thank you. That's very sweet. Julia's like, "Is this your Star Wars jacket?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's my. I'm a rebel pilot. I am a rebel pilot. This is my Star Wars jacket that I got at Galaxy's Edge." And I want to say a big shout out to Melissa and Brian and to their beautiful daughter, Sophie. Hi, Sophie. I'm going to say it's wonderful to have you join the live show again. And I hope the kids in school also are treating you well, because you're now like in the Lord of the Rings community like you never were before. And, it's just going to get bigger and better as we go down the road together as a fandom with all the family. Imagine now, the family is now making plans to get their kids together on Sunday and watch the show. And it'll be like the weekly thing for families to get together and watch Galadriel and Elrond. And I'm never going to call them young Elrond. Don't let me do that. I will never do that. It's such a misnomer. I'm not going to do that. But we're getting ready as a fandom to experience the Lord of the Rings all over again. And Middle Earth, Arda. And for the very first time, somebody's going to show us how to beautifully destroy Atlantis / Numenor. I mean, this is so exciting. I am really very, very, and I'm at a point now, especially because I know what's coming a little bit. I know a little bit about what I've seen, and I'm excited. I'm just excited. But all hands on deck. It rests on the writer's room. Okay, what those wonderful, wonderful, talented people, I know they're wonderful people, I know they're talented, but what they have in front of them is the most unenviable task of all. I would never want that job. I would never want to be in the shadow of Peter Jackson's.
Yeah, you would.
Films.
Yeah, you would.
No.
Come on.
No.
Come on.
No.
Cliff, you'd love
pressure,
to be in that writer's
pressure.
room.
No, that's where I'm going to stop and sing a Billy Joel song about pressure. I don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it.
Hey, there's a question in the chat from
Seriously.
Clint says, can you please ask Corey if he thinks we'll see the fall of the Numenorian men into ring wraiths?
100%. I think we're going to get the origin story of the ring wraiths, and
That's literally the title of the show.
I will be shocked if none of them are Numenorian. I don't expect all of them to be Numenorian necessarily.
Guys, the rings of power create ring wraiths. It's literally in the title.
We're going to be. This is going to be a big thing. We're going to possibly learn about the origin of the lieutenant who becomes the mouth of Sauron. We might learn about him too. You know, because Professor Tolkien indicated his Numenorian background, did he not?
Yeah.
Or he hinted at it.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He did.
So
he says he's a black Numenorian.
This is so cool. This is so cool to think we're going to meet kings and rulers of the South and of the Far East.
Yes.
And how much previously
we don't know how far yet. Hopefully the next couple releases.
I want to see red mountains. I want to see the Orocarni. I want to see red mountains. I want to see, and I want to learn about these characters.
They want to see right now, and
I do. I really do. And of course, that's the advantage that we have as fans. We get to tell the producers what we want.
That's it.
This is great. We're in a sweet spot. As a fandom,
Cliff, Monica wants to know from you, talk about the wood thing. The wood is not wood.
It is not wood. It was compressed sand. It was done through a unique process of sculpting the sand into a compression flat bed, like a big casserole, a big casserole dish, if you will. And, you know, it's like compressing the sand, and then it becomes something you could scoop and mold and sculpt. You could sculpt it with sculptor's tools. And by using different coloration within the compression of the sand, they made it look like grains of wood by the time you use the sculptor's tool to carve out the grooves. Those empty grooves would be filmed with the pouring of the molten alloy into the grooves. Within the tiny close-up shots where the sparks and the bright speckles were coming out, that was where they learned from the visual effects guru, Mr. Trumbull. Was his name Bill? Is it Bill Trumbull?
Douglas Trumbull.
It was Douglas Trumbull who taught them the method of sprinkling microdust from 4th of July sparklers. That's right. Everybody gets a garden variety box of sparklers on 4th of July. Well, you could crumble that stuff and put that sparkler powder deep into the grooves of the sand. And when they pour the alloy into it, it would create this magnificent physical effect. It's really quite cool what they did. Really, it's overall pretty badass. But all that being said, we are not going to be fooled by Anatar and his marketing stuff. What we really want, I'm telling you now, and Corey, thank you for letting me do it the way you did it. I'm going to say this rather aggressively. What we want is not a super slick marketing campaign. We want the writer's room to give us really, really good Tolkien narrative, really Tolkien, honest Tolkien. We want the verisimilitude, right?
Yes.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
We want the verisimilitude of J.R.R. Tolkien in this TV show. That's what we want. Just for the record, okay?
Counterpoint to that, because Cliff, I was kind of with you on this. You know, when we went to set and then the video came out where it's like they're spending all of this money for a title reveal, but seeing the fan reaction on our message board, on our Facebook group, the general consensus is from fans, they're saying, look how much money they're spending on just this part of marketing. Imagine the level of effort they're putting on the whole show.
I can imagine. And we do love to imagine things, don't we?
We do.
Well, the show has $1 billion budget, and the marketing is a budget above $1 billion. So I promise you, every dollar is being spent on the show. And if the effort of this title reveal and whatever's coming up next is to show the quality, to pull a Faramir and show their quality to fans, this title reveal does it. I just realized you just mentioned visual effects guy Douglas Trumbull. once again, we have an all-star panel of old white men who probably know Douglas Trumbull's work, but kids don't. I just pulled him up on IMDb. I know who he is. Douglas Trumbull was a visual effects supervisor on the original Blade Runner and 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Wow.
Yeah. So you want to talk about setting the atmosphere, all the smoke. The reason they knew why to use argon on this production right now for that smoke effect and those sparkling effect is because Douglas Trumbull was like, this is what we did on Blade Runner to get that smoky atmosphere of Los Angeles 2019. So, you know,
2019, yeah.
And he worked on Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Basically, Douglas Trumbull was the visual effects guy of our childhood. Close Encounters, Star Trek, freaking Andromeda Strain, Blade Runner. Like he is a legend in my life and inspired me to get into behind the scenes stuff. So it's so awesome that they brought him on board just for this little video. And you can imagine a guy with that caliber of resume doesn't come cheap. So they're putting every dollar into the marketing of the show. So that's why we think coming up next, if they're going to put this much money into the title reveal, do you know how much a Super Bowl commercial costs, Corey?
I forget. It's several million. Is it a few $1,000,000 a second? It's quite a lot, isn't it? Yeah.
It's no, and that's not for the production cost. That's
just for the screen time, right? Exactly.
Yeah, that's just for the screen time, for the privilege of showing a trailer at the Super Bowl. It cost tens of millions of dollars. So I guess the question is, Nerd of the Rings for weeks now has been predicting that there's going to be a trailer at the Super Bowl. Cliff, do you predict we will get a 30-second teaser and then go watch the full thing on YouTube? Or do you think Amazon would be so bold as to buy a full 2-minute slot?
2 minutes.
I guarantee it will be a minimum 90 seconds. It will be a minimum minute and a half Super Bowl ad.
We're talking possibly $30 million for the airtime, not including the cost of production.
Jeff Bezos doesn't care. That's a minuscule micro droplet in a micro bucket in a big, big ocean of his money. He doesn't care. So, but I'm not saying for sure. I'm just predicting. I'm predicting that if they want to make the biggest impact, then it will be a lengthy, reveal. It will be a lengthy, they'll show some dialogue. There'll be some scenes. It won't feel like a movie trailer. It might feel like a preview. It will feel like a preview. I hope. I'm projecting. Honestly, I'm hoping. This is what I hope it will be.
I think based on Galadriel's brother being in the photo and then Galadriel's voice in this teaser, I think this is a Galadriel trailer.
Hope so.
Could be.
Could be.
What do you want to see, Corey Olsen, Tolkien professor? What does a Tolkien professor want to see in the first
trailer? In a trailer, what I want to see, I want to see some places, right? I want to see Linden. I want to see
Linden. Yes,
I want to see Linden.
Yeah.
So I want to see I want to see Gilgalad's fortress in Linden. So, and like a shot of Elrond and Gilgalad chilling in Linden. I want that's one of the things I want to see on the trailer. Mm-hmm. I want to see Galadriel. See, one of the hard things is I don't want to be unfair because I don't know exactly how far they're going to go. So I don't know what's reasonable to ask for because I don't know chronologically when they're going to stop the story in season 1. Presumably the trailer will only be for season 1. I'd be interested to see a Galadriel point of view trailer or a Galadriel voiceover trailer would be interesting. I'd be really interested to see what they do with Celebrimbor. I wonder if we won't see Sauron. I wonder if they'll save that, you know, as a reveal, or, you know, like, will they not let us see?
That
Oh,
sounds like a
did-
that sounds like a juicy possibility, because
yeah.
maybe many of
Did
the
we tell you
characters
that-
don't know who he is. Maybe
Yeah.
the audience doesn't know who he is, and the characters in the season 1 don't know who he
Well,
is.
Don't know
isn't
who
that
he
a
is,
rumor that
maybe.
we heard, Cliff? We've been reporting on the show that the
And I'm-
rumors are
I am leaning into that rumor.
Sauron is not revealed in season 1.
Mhm.
The entirety of season 1.
The entirety
yeah.
of season 1.
But that narrative would make sense, because it will hook people to come into season 2, because we know that he's there somewhere, and we're going to spend a lot of season 1 speculating on who he is in disguise. It makes sense to me. All of the above
So
makes
you
sense.
want to see places? Do you want to see like an artful trailer? You know how where they like do the real close-ups of like someone's armor cuff and lit, you know, very contrasty, and it's all slow-mo, like, you know what I mean?
You know, I wouldn't say no. I'm going to be interested in seeing what they're okay. And that's one of the things that I liked about the title trailer. I was really interested. I liked their aesthetic. Like, I liked their attention to detail. I liked the overlay of, you know, symbolism and audio and video cues. I thought that was all awesome. So I will be interested to see what they do, because I want to learn about how they think and how they do things. So more than dictating, that's what I'm mostly interested in anticipating. But yeah, like I kind of want to see some characters too. I want to see Galadriel.
You want to see Galadriel in
I do want to see
full-
Galadriel.
Well, like armor, like battle armor, and
Well, I mean, I wouldn't object to seeing her in battle armor. I certainly can easily imagine her in battle armor. In fact, I'll be surprised if she's never in battle armor. She seems like that kind of gal, frankly, but especially in the Second Age. So yeah, I could totally get into that. I don't demand it. I won't be disappointed if I don't, but I'm interested to see. So another one of my questions: how are they going to handle the relationship between Galadriel and Celebrimbor?
let me see if I have a
Because-
photo of that on my phone real quick. Hold on.
Galadriel
I can't show
does.
you guys. I can't show you.
because there is a moment, and it's in Unfinished Tales, when Tolkien actually says there was a love triangle between Celebrimbor and, well, sort of love triangle. Like, basically, Celebrimbor was into her, but she wasn't into him, and she marries Celeborn instead. And later on, Celebrimbor is like, you know, Galadriel, we could have been great, but whatever. So
Oh, a bit
like-
of unrequited love.
yeah,
Do you
like,
think we
that's
should?
a
Do you
thing.
think they should?
That's a thing.
Do you think they should reveal all of the races? Like, give us a glimpse of all of the races, or do you think they should like only elves this trailer? Maybe the dwarves in the summer. Maybe Harfoot's way later.
Let me just say that if they do only show us elves, I'm certainly going to be hoping for that kind of a sequence for sure. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned Harfoots, right? Okay, so like hobbits, sure, yeah. I can't wait to see how. And I totally sympathize with folks who are anxious about this, but guys, like, Tolkien says we don't know anything about the history of hobbits. Like, nobody knows anything about
And
the history
the
of
elves
hobbits.
didn't record it on purpose.
No, exactly. Right. So like, it's literally
And the whole point of it is that they were overlooked. They were overlooked as a
exactly.
people. That's the whole bloody point. Right?
They were overlooked. And here's the other kind of, we know of, in the Third Age, we know of two sort of quasi sort of subspecies of men, right? Hobbits are one. They're clearly related to men. They're different now, right? Unlike other, but they're clearly from an ontological standpoint, right? I mean, like they like men, die and go beyond the world. Like, they're not elves. They're clearly derivative of humans in some way. And so are the Druidine, right? The Woses of the woods.
Woses. I'm
The
so
Woses, right?
grateful
Yeah.
you mentioned them. Yes.
Yeah, because and we know that the Woses existed in pretty much their current form back in the First Age, and also were there in Numenor, right? I'm expecting Woses, by the way, sooner or later. I want to see Druidine in Numenor. I'm not in the trailer. I'm not saying I insist on Druidine and on Druidine in the trailer, or Droogs, as Tolkien called them, which is a really fun word to make puns about, especially in print.
Okay, well, let's stick.
But anyway,
with this trailer.
so my point is about the Hobbit for a second, just to finish that for a second.
Yeah.
The Druidine, as this like subspecies sort of humans, existed back in the First Age. Why wouldn't hobbits? Why couldn't hobbits? Like, I don't see where anybody gets the authority to say there were no hobbits in the Second Age. Why wouldn't there be hobbits? We have no idea when hobbits started. So do I have any objection to them putting them in? Absolutely not. I'll be fascinated to see what they do. So yeah, do we get any hints about the role of hobbits in the story? How are they going to factor in? I'm going to be fascinated to see. So that's certainly a thing I'm going to be looking for in the trailer.
All right,
will be to see if we get any Hobbit hints.
But now that we have the title, The Rings of Power, let's narrow it down. What is the one character that you want to be introduced to in this trailer?
Celebrimbor.
Celebrimbor. Yeah, I agree. That's mine too.
Wait, you both agree on this?
Yeah.
Well, I know they're probably going to lean into Isildur. I mean, maybe I would expect that they're going to lean into Galadriel and Elrond and Isildur.
Familiar names.
And they might even lean into a particular couple of dwarf characters in Khazad-dûm. But I really do want to meet and greet and get comfortable with that poor, tragic man. I mean, that poor, tragic elf. That poor tragic elf, Celebrimbor.
Yeah.
What about you, Corey? What about you?
Yeah, no, I've always found him really fascinating. I saw somebody teasing me on the chat before and saying, aren't I looking forward to meeting Celeborn? Because I always give Celeborn such a hard time. He's like the trophy husband of the Third Age. But no, like it's so cute how Galadriel goes out of her way to make him feel involved. Like, it's just adorable. In the book, I mean. But anyway, yeah, no, it would be cool. But no, Celebrimbor is a really fascinating character to me. For instance, whose kid is he going to be? Is he going to be the grandson of Fëanor? I assume they're probably going to go with that. But I ask that because Tolkien changed his mind. In the published Silmarillion, Celebrimbor is the grandson of Fëanor, but he changed his mind about that later on, and instead made Celebrimbor the son of Orodreth, and therefore it's different. Like that, he changes the genealogy of Celebrimbor. So, what's up with Celebrimbor? Where did he come from? They're all kind of yeah, I'd be very interested to see what they do with Celebrimbor's character.
Yes, because everything that Anatar Sauron wants to do, it hinges on Celebrimbor. The whole story of the War of the Ring wouldn't have happened if it had not been for Celebrimbor's ultimate capabilities and skills. He's such a pivotal character.
Absolutely
really.
pivotal.
And such a blank space, right?
Yeah, because we never get him. Oh, and hang on a second. Yeah. I'm already realized I've just screwed up. I do this all the time.
Wow.
It's not Celebrimbor who he changes his mind about. It's Gil-galad who he changes his mind about, which I'm also very interested to see. He's my number 2, by the way. Gil-galad is my number 2. Gil-galad, yeah. Gil-galad has, which should be pronounced Gil-galad, but I've been pronouncing it wrong since I'm 10 and I can't.
Wait, you saying I got it right?
You totally got it right. Yeah. Gil-galad is how it's supposed to be pronounced. I've been saying it wrong for 40 years, and I'm going to say it wrong the rest of my life. It's the way it is.
And again, folks, all of this talk about a trailer at the Super Bowl, it's all conjecture. We have no inside information, and I promise you, I know we might have lost some trust about keeping the secret of the title, but Cliff and I have not seen the trailer. I promise you. Cliff, let's look straight in the eye.
I have not seen any bloody trailer. I do not know what they're going to show, but I would like to speculate on what they're going to show.
I might have seen the first 3 episodes, but that's a whole different discussion. We're talking about a trailer. The trailer we have not seen. We don't know what's coming. But so my final question to you, Corey Olsen, the Tolkien professor, follow him on Twitter. If there is a trailer at the Super Bowl, the big game, do we jump online and do a 1 hour or more breakdown immediately during the game, or wait
Yep.
until after the game?
Yes. No, we do it immediately.
I
We
think
do
I
it
can
immediately.
probably do that. I think I can probably,
down.
given who's likely to be playing this year, I can probably, my team's out. So, you know, it's fine.
I love the Rams. If look, the Super Bowl is being played in Los Angeles, and the Rams, if they make it, this town is going to go nuts.
That's funny.
True.
You're funny.
So Cliff, you're saying if there's a trailer, we turn off the TV and we jump online?
Yes, I'm down for that.
And
Yeah.
Corey, you're in?
Yes. I give a tentative yes.
Tentative yes.
Because I don't think sometimes I have family plans for the Super Bowl. If I had like all of my family over at the house, it would be a little bit harder, but I probably won't. So I think it'll be okay.
Are you ready for some football? Okay.
Well,
no,
hey
seriously,
guys, look, this has been an awesome conversation about a freaking title name. We talked for 2 hours about a title, and this is after doing 2 hours on Twitter Spaces the day it came out, which I thought was really fun to just have an audio conversation with all of our Twitter folk, and it's just wonderful.
Let us mention the day that it came out. There was a little magical numerology going on that we didn't even notice.
Yeah.
And Robert, I'm very grateful. Thank you that Robert is in our live chat, and he said, "Didn't you guys notice that it was January 19th, 1/19? That numerically applies to the rings of power. There was one, and then there were 19
and
lesser
19
rings.
others. Yeah.
I never noticed, but I guess if I was paying attention, I would have seen that way ahead of time coming. I should have seen it coming. But anyways, you were going to say, Corey?
Amazon, if you did that on purpose, can you put that in the notes next time so we don't miss that? Like, I feel like the date was really.
That's pretty cool.
It was. So now Fabricio is asking, when are we going to see the trailer? And the answer is,
we just said we don't know. But
we don't know, but we're expecting a big showing, some kind of a showing of something at the Super Bowl coming up in 3 weeks. It's about less than 3 weeks away, maybe. And beyond that, who knows what's going to happen?
February 13th at the Super Bowl. That's the day that Nerd of the Rings. And if Nerd of the Rings is wrong, we're all unsubscribing from him.
No.
No, but you can
all the
subscribe.
pressure's on Meta.
You can subscribe to the Tolkien Professor on Twitch, on YouTube. You're streaming on Twitch all the time. So much wonderful content. Stephen Colbert calls you is a regular viewer of your stuff, and Tolkien Prof is your Twitter handle. And Corey Olson, no relation to Wanda Maximoff, right?
No, that is correct.
That's the other Olsons.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you doing? Oh my God! Everyone in the YouTube chat is trying to scream and shout and say, "Lol, we know that you've seen it." We haven't seen it.
They're not going to believe you. You can say whatever you want. They're not going to believe you.
Look what they've done. Amazon gave us a set visit. Now no one trusts us. What have they done?
Oh no! Do you know
This
what?
is some Sauron level play going on.
Okay. The next area of speculation is what kind of bigger events they're going to do at some of the major North American fan conventions. And
fan conventions. Omicron has shut everything down so far, as it should. Get vaxxed, folks.
Late July, San Diego Comic-Con is still on the calendar.
There might be another variant by then. Who knows?
You're right, but it's on the calendar. But for San Diego Comic-Con, but we have all of springtime to worry about that later until the summer comes. But you know what, kids?
Monica, our credibility has failed. Monica,
what?
You're
Oh no! Come on, Monica, be nice. Yeah, we love you guys.
You guys have been sitting there smiling like the cat who ate the cream the whole show. Like practically every time I'm talking, I'm looking at the two of you, and you're both like,
I have not.
I can't respond to that.
I don't know anything.
No way.
It's all good. It's all fine. Yeah, no worries. It's just more fun. You're totally not going to convince anybody that you don't know. I mean, it's not going to happen.
All right, we don't. All right, then. Okay, you know what? Let's just.
Cliff doesn't even have to respond. Hey, everybody, this has been a great Torn Tuesday. We're here every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. It's always wonderful to catch up with Corey Olson, the Tolkien Professor. And Cliff, take us out.
You know, it's really wonderful. This audience, and I'm going to feel the love with my audience because they're a great group of people who have been with us. Thank you for being Tolkien fans.
And now they only trust Corey.
And they only trust Corey now. Thank you. You know what? When somebody sends me that GIF of Galadriel and she's giving the side eye to Ian McKellen and saying, "You knew."
Right.
From An Unexpected Journey. I know I deserve that gift I know, but not now. Now I don't deserve it, okay? Because I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I want to acknowledge the audience. They're beautiful, beautiful people. And thanks to everybody coming to spend this time with us on Tuesday. We will, obviously, be back here next Tuesday at 5 p.m. The Tolkien professor is our inimitable guest. He is Corey Olson. And right now we're going to let him go so he can do his next live stream that he's got to get ready for. Wonderful.
In 5 minutes. That's right.
You know what? I can't believe it. You guys are awesome. Thank you. And until next time, please get your booster shot and take good care of yourselves. And, you know, keep this to a dull roar. Keep it down if you can. Let's keep it down. And in the meantime, I'm going to celebrate a birthday. And when I see you guys next week, I will be 1 year older and hopefully a lot wiser. I hope so. So I wish you all the best and take good care of yourselves. Until next Tuesday at theonering.net, Torn Tuesday, I wish you good night and good luck. Or buenos noches y buena suerte. Bye, everybody.
Bye now.